Usually in these explainers, we bring a pretty high energy approach to breaking down complex topics. But today, well, we're doing things a bit differently. We're stepping back to look at something much heavier, a really profound, lingering trauma following a fatal maritime accident. The Jabalpur boat tragedy is, quite frankly, a deeply sobering story. It demands our utmost respect and empathy. We're not just looking at the nuts and bolts of a mechanical failure today. No, we are examining the human cost. The kind of cost that echoes long after the waters have literally calmed, and way after that initial shock has passed. Okay, so let's dive into this carefully. Can't eat sleep. I want you to really think about those words. They aren't just text on a screen. This is a visceral, first-hand reality. This was actually shared by the vessel's pilot during a really deeply moving interview with NDTV. When tragedy strikes, the media naturally tends to focus on the physical wreckage, right? The broken pieces. But these three simple, devastating words immediately drop us into the completely shattered internal world of the person who actually lived through it. It's a very raw, unfiltered glimpse into what is essentially an ongoing nightmare. And this really perfectly illustrates what we absolutely need to understand as the invisible reality of disaster. Look, the broken hull of a boat, that can be pulled out of the water, photographed, put on the front page for everyone to see. But the suffocating, silent, emotional aftermath, that can't be captured so easily. The operator's inability to do the most fundamental human things, like just eating a meal or getting a night's sleep, shows us that for him, the accident definitely didn't end when the rescue boat showed up. It's an enduring event. It's replaying constantly in the quietest moments of his day-to-day life. To truly wrap our heads around the weight of that invisible reality, we have to confront a really stark number: 9. 9 lives were lost in the waters of Jabalpur. That's 9 individuals with families, futures, and stories that were just abruptly cut short. And to put that into perspective, this number isn't just a statistic. It's the devastating context that creates the absolute gravity of the pilot's current mental state. Right after any disaster happens, the news cycle almost inevitably zeroes in on the visible tragedy. You've seen it. We get the raw statistics, the timelines, the confirmed death tolls, the physical details of the scene. And honestly, it's how we as a society kind of initially process a catastrophic event. But here's the catch. When an incident is reduced entirely to those metrics, we risk losing sight of the incredibly complex, ongoing human narrative. Those initial reports give us the what happened, sure, but they very rarely capture the full scope of the devastation that sticks around afterward. Now, what's really important to note here is how that NDTV interview bravely details the specific, debilitating psychological manifestations that are haunting this survivor. We're seeing severe insomnia, an inability to eat, just persistent mental anguish, and this really profound personal guilt. The pilot isn't just trying to shake off a bad memory. His body and his mind are practically locked in a state of active trauma. It's essentially a psychological and physiological paralysis. This is the heavy mental anguish that so often haunts the people who survive when others, tragically, don't. So what the pilot is describing here actually bridges the gap between his deeply personal interview and a recognized clinical reality. And that reality is survivor's guilt. Essentially, it's a profound psychological distress that happens when a person believes they've somehow done wrong just by surviving a tragic event when others perished. And when you listen to him, the immense weight of that survivor's guilt clearly threads through every single word of his account. It literally transforms his physical survival into a heavy, almost unbearable emotional burden. So the absolutely crucial point here is this. These personal, harrowing struggles actually shed light on a much broader tragedy. It's the unseen human cost. We're looking past the physical casualties and really examining the profound emotional wreckage left behind. The pilot's trauma acts almost like a magnifying glass, forcing us to recognize that the damage inflicted by the Jabalpur tragedy, it outlasts the initial event by months, years, or honestly, maybe even a lifetime. It's a cost that's never going to show up on a standard incident report, but it absolutely demands our acknowledgement and, frankly, our empathy. We're basically faced with two deeply intertwined realities here. On one hand, there is the initial loss of life, those 9 victims claimed directly by the tragedy. But on the other hand, there's also the long-term human cost. We're talking about the enduring mental trauma of the survivors, like the vessel's operator, who were left behind to pick up the pieces. A disaster just isn't a singular, finite event with a neat ending. The ripples of a catastrophic accident claim both visible victims and invisible psychological casualties, and we really need to be paying attention to both. As we step back from this specific incident, we really have to look beyond Jabalpur itself. Because this single, poignant NDTV report vividly illustrates a universal truth: the long-term impact on mental health for anyone directly involved in fatal transport accidents. Whether that's out on the water, on land, or up in the air, it's just staggering. The profound guilt, the sleepless nights, that shattered silence, these are shared human experiences in the wake of immense, sudden loss. And understanding this is absolutely key to helping us foster better, stronger support for survivors of literally any major disaster. Which brings us to a final, admittedly difficult question. When the news cycle eventually moves on, as it always does, how can society better support the invisible casualties who are left carrying this profound weight of survival? Long after the headlines fade out and the news cameras pack up and leave, the mental anguish remains. It's an unseen, incredibly enduring human cost that I think we all need to take a moment to reflect on.